to many departments. So many departments in international law, in English, religious studies, political science, political administration, and international relations. He was the head of department in that university from 2009 to 2011, and an external examiner outside the university. In addition, he was on sabbatical at the University of Sussex, Brighton, 1996 to 1998, University of Ado-Ekiti, 2008, and Veritas University, Abuja, 2011. Professor Oyeshola has successfully assessed colleagues for the position of associate professor and professor. He has widely published in national and international journals, and also has published many books, 3 of which are published through Amazon online publications. Some of these books are: 1, Oyeshola D, 1998, Politics of International Environmental Regulations, Daily Graphics Publications, Ibadan. The second one is Conflict and Context of Conflict Resolution in 2005 at the Obafemi Awolowo University Press, Ile-Ife, published there. Then there's another one, Sustainable Development, Issues and Challenges for Nigeria. This was in 2019 at Atman Limited, Osogbo. Professor Oyeshola's teaching students is centered with pedagogical nuances of formal research papers and projects, reviews of books, active participation of students in seminars and lectures and written examinations. He established an endowment prize for best graduating students in IRS, that's International Religious Studies, Technology, Science and Environment in World Affairs at Obafemi Awolowo University. He has encouraged learning, imparted knowledge, and made contribution to scholarship. Professor Oyeshola's area of specialization includes environmental politics, conflict and peace studies, international institutions, international economic relations, and politics of development. He is, in addition to being an academic professor, he is a Catholic priest and of the Dominican order of preachers. Yes, we have a two-in-one today, an academic and a spiritual person. We are very proud to have him here to come and share his knowledge with us. And his presentation today is titled, Young Nigerians' Migration in the Era of Sustainable Development Paradigm in Nigeria. Join me in welcoming our professor to this presentation. You are welcome, Professor Oyeshola, and we are clapping for you. I hope you can hear or see us. We are all very excited to have you here to share your knowledge with us. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Ma. Let me begin by expressing my appreciation to Associate Professor Gloria Aneto, Director of the Center of Excellence in Migration and Global Studies, NON, for inviting me to this program. I'm also taking this opportunity to express my appreciation to all those who have been able to link up for this presentation. The topic I'm trying to address is young Nigerians' migration in the area of sustainable development paradigm in Nigeria, some challenges. The outline I'm following is along this direction: introduction, conceptual clarification of migration and sustainable development paradigm, challenges of sustainable development paradigm, some contributive factors influencing young Nigerian migrants, symbiotic relationship and challenges between the young Nigerians' migration and development of the nation in the context of the UN Roadmap of Development for All. And of course, the conclusion. In relation to the introduction, we are in a global community, global world, and globalization has brought with it increasing state relations and movements of capital, goods, and people. There is increasing wars and violence, as well as poverty, that are making humans to forcefully leave their homelands and go in search for better living conditions. Young and dynamic Nigerians are not left out in the current wave of migration. The contemporary international system is witnessing increasing call for nationalism against internationalism with great consequences for the global human family. Before now, the idea is that we are in the global world and we should be, each state should be concerned, should be interested in the welfare of another state. Let us see ourselves as living in a global village, but that attitude is gradually changing. So people are beginning to be more interested in their own state at the detriment of other states. And one of the fallout of the self-interested policies of states is seen in the problems of migrants, asylum seekers, and refugees all over the world. It is against these backdrops that this paper seeks to examine the implication of young Nigerian migrants poses for the development of Nigeria in the light of sustainable development paradigm as part of the new roadmap for development model. Conceptual clarification of migration and sustainable development paradigm. So let me begin with the one of migration. The Nigerian National Migration Policy 2015 defines migration as the process of temporary or permanent relocation of a person from his or her place of primary abode to another in search of better living, family reunification, further studies, or any other reasons. Understood as human mobility, the human persons are the principal actors. They are technically labeled as migrants, sojourners, pilgrims, aliens, and strangers. It involves change of residence from a local, country, or region to another with multidimensional and sometimes reversible movements. Humans migrate for different reasons and purposes. Some have to relocate to foreign lands as a result of war or banishment as punishment for an offense. Some have to evacuate their homes because of plagues, natural catastrophes like earthquake, as in the case of Haiti, volcanic eruption, flood, famine, epidemics, etc. Some have to seek asylum for political, social, and economic reasons. There are many Africans and others from developing countries in this condition of existence. These are human-made catastrophes resulting from injustice done by a few who hold the economic and political powers. All right, sorry for the interruption. So let me continue with the conceptual clarification in relation to sustainable development paradigm. This area can be classified into 4 sessions. The first one is general principles of sustainable development. The second is the international environmental law principles. The third, the legislative and institutional framework of environmental protection and remediation, while the fourth one is the principles of international collaboration. In relation to the principles of sustainable development, there are some principles that have been encouraged, that have been put in place for the international community to continue to embrace. This one is preventive principle, which requires that activity which does not or will cause environmental pollution or damage is to be prohibited. That's the first principle there. The second one is precautionary principle. In its most progressive formula, the principle may be utilized to overthrow the traditional burden of proof that is presently weighing heavily on people who have committed any pollution, to be the people to prove that they are the people who are responsible for the pollution. But this principle now, the precautionary principle, is now saying that we act to revert the burden of proof and require any potential polluter to ensure that the activity will not cause pollution before it is allowed to commence. That is, before you begin to do anything, if there is any possibility of that program, that activity that's going to cause pollution, then you just have to take the necessary precaution to make sure that what you are trying to do will not eventually lead to pollution. The third principle there is principle of polluter pays. The principle provides that the cost of environmental pollution should be borne by those whose activities were responsible for causing pollution. Anyone or any group that is responsible for pollution of any environment, once it's caught, then whatever pollution it must have caused, he is held responsible to pay for the problem he has already caused. The fourth one is the principle of citizen participation and the right to a healthy environment. This is based on the premise that to ensure the effective implementation of environmental laws at all levels, individuals should be able to participate in environmental decision-making. So those are the principles associated with that. The second element, the international environmental law principles, the first one has to do with sustainable development. This is the first international environmental law principle that says that conservation of natural resources for the benefit of the present and future generations must be sustained, while the exploitation of natural resources must be sustainable or prudent. That means whatever we are doing, either individually or collectively, this idea of making sure that what we are doing is going to allow the environment to be sustainable is one of this, is the idea behind this principle of sustainable development. There is equitable use of natural resources, which implies that the use of one state must take account of the needs of other states. Further elements of sustainable principle include integration of environmental considerations into socio-economic and development plans, programs, and projects of different countries, that all nation states in their plans, they must integrate this principle in all their activities. International environmental law principles continue. The second element here is the principle of public environmental order, that all members of the society, the administration, groups, organizations, businesses, and citizens are called upon to collaborate in sustainable development, but under the strategic control and supervision of the state. That means no particular individual is left out. The issue of environmental sanity is responsibility of all, but all has to be done within the confines of the nation state of the government. The third element there is principle of carrying capacity, is the number of species or units which can be maintained indefinitely by an ecosystem without degradation of that system. D1, principle of obligatory restoration of disturbed ecosystem, part of the system. That means anytime there is any particular area that is already being destroyed or is causing problems, then we are expected to call attention to that reality and do something about it. For example, in our own part of the world, when Ogoni area was destroyed, eventually the Shell and all the multinationals that are operative in that particular area were taken to court, and eventually they were given responsibility to make sure that the area is properly cleaned. So anywhere we discover any area that is being polluted, attention must be called to that one and something has to be done about it. A, principle of biodiversity. Here, the principle of biodiversity recognizes the inherent value of wild flora and fauna species and provides legal protection for all the variety of these species and for their habitats. The intrinsic value of species is in particular that they are biogenetic reserves and constitutes an integral part of the ecosystem. In that sense, biodiversity is protected as the preeminent principle of the stability and vigor of ecosystem, according to the reasoning that the greater an ecosystem's biodiversity, the greater is its stability. Before now, many times, we human beings try to more or less say we are in control of all the natural resources around us, and that anything that has no meaning, that is not useful to us as human beings, we try to more or less destroy it. But this principle is also affirming that all these natural resources have meaning in themselves, not depending on the type of meaning we give to them. The legislative and institutional framework of environmental protection and remediation, here again, internationally, every country has rules and regulations, different kinds of interinstitutional framework that is related to the environment in terms of protection. If there's any particular problem, how do we face it? How do we confront it? In the Nigerian context, so many rules and regulations are already in place. There's no need in going into details. We have so many of them. The Criminal Code Act is one of them. National Oil Spill Detection and Response Agency, NOSDRA. National Environmental Standards and Regulations Enforcement Agency, NESTRIA. Environmental Guidelines and Standards for the Petroleum Industry in Nigeria, EGASPRIN. Petroleum Act, Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NIMET. This particular agency was established by Section 1, Nigerian Meteorological Agency, that was established 2004. Environmental guidelines and standards for the petroleum industry in Nigeria, EGASPRIN. The Nigerian Development of Petroleum Resources, DPR. All these are part and parcel of the institutions that are already in place. Environmental guidelines and standards for the petroleum industry in Nigeria, petroleum drilling and production regulations, 1969. All these are some of the examples. Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps is also part and parcel of what is already in place to help us to respond as appropriate in relation to mediation in Nigeria and environmental protection. Environmental Impact Assessment Act. This also has become part and parcel of instrument before the government to make sure that any project that may have any side effect on the environment must be properly scrutinized. Necessary work is done on it to make sure that what type of problem it may cause is also forestalled. And then whatever needs to be done to make sure that it doesn't create environmental degradation is taken into account. So it has become a policy that before any major project is undertaken, the necessary process in relation to Environmental Impact Assessment Act must be followed. And the fourth principle, the principle of international cooperation, collaboration. Some of the principles of international collaboration are enunciated in the Declaration of the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment. This is in Stockholm, 1972. And we can cite some of the examples. Then principles 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 15, 19, 21, 22, 24, 25 are some of the examples. To let us have a feel of what those principles are talking about, Principle 2, for example, says the natural resources of the earth, including the air, water, land, flora, and fauna, and especially representative samples of natural ecosystems, must be safeguarded for the benefit of present and future generations through careful planning or management as appropriate. That means every country must also be concerned about the welfare of other countries. So that's more or less the emphasis of that as a principle of collaboration worldwide. Principle 4 says that man has a special responsibility to safeguard and wisely manage the heritage of wildlife and its habitat, which are now gravely impaired by a combination of adverse factors. Natural conservation, including wildlife, must therefore receive importance in planning for economic development. Here in this context, any group of animals that may be in danger of extinction, definitely something has to be done along that direction. This is the principle that we are interested in the welfare of the international community as a whole. Principle 6 says this discharge of toxic substances or of other substances and the release of heat in such quantities or concentration as to exceed the capacity of the environment to render them harmless must be halted in order to ensure that serious irreversible damage is not inflicted upon ecosystems. the just struggle of the peoples of all countries against pollution should be supported. Again, example of climate change comes to mind. It is no longer the problem of a particular country or a single individual country. It is an issue that is affecting the entire humanity. So if you are going to look for solutions, therefore, it is the collaboration of all of us. And so this principle is inviting everybody to take part in looking for solutions to arrest environmental degradation or global warming. Another principle there is principle 8, which says economic and social development is essential for ensuring a favorable living and working environment for man and for creating conditions on earth that are necessary for the improvement of the quality of life. All our activities must also make sure that our environment in which we are living is conducive to the good quality of life we experience or we want to experience. So those are more or less the clarification in relation to environmental sustainable development paradigm as well as the migration. Let us now quickly move on to challenges of sustainable development paradigm in Nigerian context. Generally, the international community is interested in making sure that we all develop. And efforts were put in place to make sure that particularly developing countries are not left behind in the process of development. And so the Millennium Development Goals and Sustainable Development Goals are now concrete expressions of the paradigm of development that is already in place. Again, in this context, we can't go into any detail in looking into all these goals, but these goals are more or less set that they be the basis by which we can continue to operate so that development will be for everybody, including the developing countries. But if we look into all those goals, the activities that are already in place, we discover that things are still far from what they ought to be. Why? Arbitrary selection of the rate at which progress is to be made. The projection under Goal 3 assures of ensuring healthy lives and well-being for everyone, and the maternal mortality is to be cut to 70% by 1,000 births, and child mortality is to be eliminated. It is quite unclear what factors inform this projection and what mechanisms have been put in place to convince everyone that such towering targets are achievable within the period specified. So many of the programs that are already said, that are already put in place by will of goals, the way they are to be arrived at and all that are not clearly stated. And so they may not be too wonderful to bring solution to the problem of underdevelopment in many of the developing countries. The Sustainable Development Goals framework is also silent on social groups as agents of change alongside governments. The SDGs framework addresses key systemic barriers to sustainable development, such as inequality, unsustainable consumption patterns, weak institutional capacity, and environmental degradation that the Millennium Development Goals neglected. However, it may be observed that the Sustainable Development Framework does not identify the wide range of critical social groups that will need to be mobilized to deliver on the goals as agents of change alongside governments. Again, some of these principles or some of these goals were not properly articulated to take into account all the major actors in every nation state. So this is also one of the major problems that may not necessarily help us in realizing the objective of development that this paradigm is more or less putting before us. Another element is lack of enhancement of close collaboration between the policy and epistemic communities and other stakeholders. Again, all those who are well informed, who could also be of assistance in making sure that all these goals are put in place, were not properly taken care of. It is only recently that institutions are now being consulted to spend more time in trying to look for ways and means of supporting this idea of sustainable development using some of these goals. The implication of this is that without this partnership, which is hard to come by, the hope of achieving the ambitious and overarching sustainable development goals is but chimerical. Nelson and Constanza in their report support this particular idea. Challenges of sustainable development paradigm in Nigeria context, again, we continue. Implementation mechanism within each society seems inadequate. Though universality is intrinsically associated with the sustainable development goals in different ways, the framework, however, does not sufficiently state the groups within society other than aid agencies and national governments that is necessary to employ in order to deliver on the goals. The private sector perspectives and incentives to participate in the delivery of the goals are not reflected in the SDGs framework. Again, it must be emphasized that sustainable development goals were framed from modernization theoretical perspective and philosophical assumption that development must wear the cloak of the West, except we be like Oyinbo, that is the white people, we have not arrived, we have not made it. And everything by way of development must always be bearing the examples of the people in the industrial world. Again, something has to be done about this. So all the principles or goals are more or less arranged to reflect this reality. Africans, as an example, if they are going to be developed, if they are going to be referred as being developed entity, must be like the industrial world in every detail, culture, peculiarities of their situation notwithstanding. In relation to the legislative and institutional framework of environmental protection and remediation, there are many rules and regulations. Unfortunately, in the Nigerian context, the transparent, honest, and on-time implementation of them is problematic. We have rules and regulations, but most of the time, they are not being followed to help us to make sure that what they're trying to correct are properly corrected. Similarly, in the context of the area of the principle of international collaboration and cooperation, the West is not always honoring the financial obligations towards the South. This is understandable because many countries, particularly in the West, are shifting from internationalism to nationalism in order to protect their national interests. A clear example of this is the exit of Britain from the European Union. Let me face my own people. Let me do whatever is necessary and important for my own people. So the idea of universality is more or less gradually waning. If we are going to talk about development, this dimension must also be revisited to make sure that internationalism is also an important element of collaboration between the West and the South. So now we now go to some contributive factors influencing young Nigerian migration. The first element here is the young Nigerian migrants primarily may be classified into two, namely legal and illegal. The legal are generally trained and are professionals like the medical doctors, nurses, teachers, technicians, students. Again, in terms of statistical figures, this may not be necessary in this context. We are aware that many of our young doctors, anytime there's any opportunity, they simply move out. The nurses are not left out. Technicians, many students are deciding to also move out. These are categories of migrants that are in the area of profession, they are professionals. The second category can be put under the general group of artisans. These two groups are within the age range of 18 and 39. The non-professionals often migrate through the Sahara Desert and Mediterranean Sea to their arrival in Europe. Another area of emphasis is that Nigerian young migrants, particularly illegal ones, often target Europe because of the sea and land routes that African countries, such as Libya and Morocco, share with European countries such as Italy and Spain. Third element, the poverty situation of citizens has been the major factor driving migration to Europe. The former Nigerian president, Olusegun Obasanjo, has said the worsening level of employment, poverty, and unresolved conflict across the African continent are major threats responsible for increasing legal migration from Africa through Mediterranean to Europe by Africans, saying the African leaders must act now to end illegal migration on the continent. The fourth element here is that in the case of Nigeria, the breakdown of the Nigerian educational system at variety of all levels, high unemployment and poverty rates in Nigeria, and the general disillusionment with the country's political leadership and insecurity are the major causes of youth discontent with the Nigerian state. And so many young Nigerians are frustrated and see their ambition dashed away. They lose hope in the country, and in some cases, take up unholy activities like taking drugs, joining armed robbery and cultism. Some become so frustrated and venture to leave for foreign lands. The fifth element here is unresolved economic and infrastructural problems. Insurgencies and political challenges constitute some of the major factors responsible for increasing migration from Nigeria to Europe and to other parts of the world. As long as these challenges subsist and overall political unrest, economic instability, and general deprivation are experienced on a daily basis, and journey of the young migrants through tortuous desert routes before facing an even more dangerous crossing of the Mediterranean in flimsy, crowded vessels to Europe. Notwithstanding Europe will continue to struggle with migrant inflows from Nigeria. The sixth element is that the federal government of Nigeria has consistently reacted to the issue of youth unemployment with a wide array of empowerment programs. Some of the programs include the Earn Power program that was launched by Buhari administration to help Nigerians aged between 18 and 35 years acquire and develop the requisite skills and knowledge for self-development and economic growth. 2, Youth Empowerment Agribusiness Program was launched in January 2016 by the federal government of Nigeria in collaboration with African Bank to help contribute to job creation, food security, as well as improved livelihoods of Nigerian youth. The 3-year US 3,000 million program was targeted to 18 to 35-year-old in 36 states and was projected to create 250,000 jobs. Beneficiaries of the program were to complete a 2-week training and internship and were subsequently expected to submit agribusiness proposals for loan consideration of up to $50,000 US. Social Welfare Intervention Program, where the federal government collaborates with state governments to implement social welfare intervention programs, such as conditional cash transfers, vocational training for youth, hiring of teachers, school feeding program, among other interventions. The Youth Entrepreneurial Support Project, a 10 billion youth entrepreneurial support project to empower youth with loans to start businesses. About 36,000 jobs were expected to be created annually through the project. While the government has initiated these programs for the youth, it has not at the moment translated into better life for the young Nigerians. And as a result, many young people are still eager to live for foreign lands. So all the mentioned factors are still very, very real. They are still with us. And so until some of those problems are confronted, the young Nigerians will continue to migrate abroad. So let us now look at the symbiotic relationship and implications between the young Nigerians' migration and development of the country. First, majority of young Nigerian illegal migrants are daily paid or casual workers if they are able to get some employment. Some of them work as prostitutes, house girls, and some are in prisons. They have no insurance, pension, or leave allowance, or overtime. Illegal immigrants do not have local standing, so they cannot complain. They can't report, they can't cry out for justice. And in some places, even the workers have to pay kickbacks to the owners for protecting them. Hard condition and stress, they lose their jobs. When they are sick, they will not be able to go to hospitals. Alternatively, they seek private or self-medication. And when they are seriously ill, whether from the hazard of their jobs or heart condition and stress, they lose their jobs. When they die, only the rest of the immigrants need to find a way of disposing of their dead colleagues. Despite all these demoralizing conditions, the immigrants will still manage to send few dollars or euros home to the hungry family members from the stipend which the family members will share with joy, rejoicing that their child abroad is doing well, and so they'll be happy to receive whatever type of stipend that's given to them. Many other migrants who may not be under this category also send a lot of money by way of assistance to their respective families. So in this way, they are also contributing to the economic situation of the country, helping the poor ones in their families to become better citizens. Now we can look at another factor here. At independence, Nigeria wanted to develop like Europe. Accordingly, it embarked on the process of development by establishing infrastructure of education, transportation, health facilities, water and communication, etc. By 1980, Nigeria has become truly the giant of Africa. And then, of course, Nigeria was spending money more or less recklessly, so to say. Money is not our problem, but how to spend it, said one of the ex-head of state many years back. All those that the country trained have become profitable capital investment by contributing to the well-being of the country. All that is now in the past. Nigeria has become very, very poor. Unresolved economic and infrastructural problems, insurgencies, political unrest, economic instability, general deprivation are experienced on a daily basis. Except the young are educated and skills empowered, the future of the country will be bleak. Let me conclude. UN Roadmap of Development for All, through the expression of Millennium Development Goals as well as Sustainable Development Goals, are present. And it is within that setting we are still operating so that we can become developed. Unfortunately, whether we are going to be able to arrive at our destiny is yet to be seen. In relation to the evaluation of its half tenure, which terminates by 2030, the objectives of Sustainable Development Goals is far from being realized. In Nigeria, there are poverty, unemployment, sense of helplessness among many young Nigerians. The unresolved economic and infrastructural problems, insurgencies, kidnapping, corruption, and political challenges are very, very real to us. For Nigeria to develop and tide of migration to subside, one, there should be concerted efforts to implement the second National Youth Policy document of the Federal Republic of Nigeria of 2009. Two, the Nigerian government should provide funds, facilitate training, and ensure conducive environment aimed at developing the informal sector to absorb the larger number of young people. Three, establish functional strategies to address radically the challenges of the young Nigerians as human capital development. We should make every effort that we are training our young ones who tomorrow will be the people to take care of the welfare of the country. Nigeria must approach its developmental challenges differently, not repeating the same old way of doing things. We have to be radically different this time around. The threat of instruments of mass instruction notwithstanding, because anytime you are trying to be different, anytime developing countries are trying to take radical decisions to address their own fundamental problems without having to depend, begging from the industrial communities, many times they were just being threatened. Even when we are being threatened, we can still do without having to say we are not going to do what we believe in. We must also take our own destiny into our own hands. And of course, industrialization is key to this venture. Meanwhile, the sustainable development paradigm as engine of development must be revisited. Hope for a better society for Nigeria must be kept alive. And confronting headlong the challenges of the young Nigerians must take a central stage in the politics. Finally, I take this opportunity once again to thank all of you for your patience and time and the opportunity given to me to make this presentation. Again, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. We really appreciate your effort. And well, I allowed Prof to go this long because he's a professor, and I've been told that professors are allowed to talk for about 1 hour. So today I decided to practice it, even though I've not been practicing it in the past. So, and I am very happy with what I have heard. I know that people are itching to talk, and first on the list is our former Vice Chancellor, whose hand is up to make a comment or ask questions. I just want to quickly tell Prof this. We allow people to make comments and questions all taken at once at the end before you respond, because we don't want to be interjecting, maybe question, answer kind of thing. If you note all the questions / comments, then we can now, you can now respond at the end. On my own part, I would think that this title needs an adjustment. Personally, I would think there should be, after young Nigerians migration in the era of sustainable development, there should be a column there. And I think the paradigm should be like a paradigm shift in environmental sustainability. That's my own take, so that it will really bring out the beauty of this talk. Because as I was following, I enjoyed it because of the environmental part that you really put in. Because when it comes to studies on environment, I'm always very thrilled because I have done a little bit of work in environmental health. And so I really appreciate that part. I don't know if you put that, whether it will distort this topic, if you put this as a paradigm shift in environmental sustainability, you know, that kind of thing, as that a way to adjust this topic. But I leave that to the senior professors to handle. And before I allow our former VC, Professor Obadamu, to talk, I want to really appreciate the presence of many people I'm seeing here. I want Professor Abdallah to start off. You can start off, sir. You are muted. You can unmute yourself.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes,
good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. So good to see.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good to see Eric enjoying himself in America. And the old man, Professor Sogolo, the professor of dead white philosophers. We were together during the convocation over the weekend, so it's good to see him again. Thank you very much, Professor Oyeshola, for your presentation. I have a few issues to raise, very few, and I thought that, first of all, it seemed to me the paper focused attention on the political economy of sustainability rather than the dependent and independent variable, because what I see as dependent and independent variables are young people, migration, and sustainable development. But the way I see it, it looks like the two concepts were dealt with separately. I didn't see much linkage between young people and sustainable development, at least sustainable development as outlined in the paper in terms of specific parameters. As I was listening, I was trying to figure out how young people and migration could fit into that larger ecosystem or that ecology. So I want the professor to give me a clear corridor, a clear bridge that links migration and sustainable development, at least based on the framework that he has given us. And this issue of globalization as being a contemporary phenomenon. Globalization has been with us since ancient period, since ancient time. It's not something new. What is new about globalization is that it has taken different forms. Media has made it much, much easier for us to interconnect, but people have been moving around across borders for centuries. The trans-Saharan trade in northern Nigeria, for instance, has been going on for centuries. That's globalization. People moving from North Africa down south to northern Nigeria and establishing trading networks. So I think we need to really understand that globalization is not a contemporary phenomenon, but something that has been going on for a very, very long time. Maybe you can say media globalization, because media has now made it easier for us to hear and see and interact with other people from all over the world. There is also this poor Yakubu Gowon. People are always misquoting him on this money is not a problem issue. I think he himself took steps to explain what he meant when Nigeria suddenly became rich in 1973 as a result of the Yom Kippur War. And when the governor of Central Bank came to him in Dodan Barracks, was in a panicky, very, very panicky mode, saying that we have a lot of money, but we don't have, our strategic plan did not take care into account the fact that we have a lot of money. So it is not, poor Gowon is always been misquoted on that, but that's simply something else. Finally, the recommendations made by the professor about youth, employment, and so on seem to have already been factored in when in the main paper itself, when he was outlining some of the strategies that the government has put in place in order to deal with youth unemployment, to stem the tide of youth migration. So it seems like a repeat, but the crux of my observation is I would like to see a clearer link between youth migration and sustainable development. I have learned quite a lot about sustainable development. I have learned quite a lot about youth migration, but I do not see what connects the two of them together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for that wonderful comment. I can see that I cannot see that she has also been in a food store, sorry, before.
I can't hear. I mean, it seems there is a problem with your mic or with my mic. I don't know which one it is.
It is hers.
Yeah, because I can't hear. She seems to be on and off.
We can't hear you, ma.
Oh, so sorry. Let me see. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Let's see what's happening. No, can you still hear me? No.
We can hear you now.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I was just saying, I'm welcoming the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Technology, Innovation and Research, She came earlier, she went for a quick assignment and she's back to join us. And I said that I'm sure she's very happy to be here because I know she has a lot to offer when talking about sustainable development and environment. She has said she has done some work in that area too, so she will have some contributions for us. I am now going to call on Dr. Eric Omazu to take the virtual space. Can we hear from you, please? After that, Professor Aneto.
Okay. Thank you, Director, for this opportunity. My greetings to everyone, in particular, my greetings to my boss, Professor Abdallah Albadamo. Now, my question...
Hey, Miki, I'm not your boss, so I know they're in that place again. What you?
I have two observations, sir. Number one is with your classification of migrants into legal and illegal migrants. And I think the distinction you made is too sharp. Too sharp. You tend to think that all professionals who migrate are legal, and then all illegal migrants are artisans, you know? And from my experience here, I'm presently in the United States of America. From my experience here, that distinction or classification does not work, you know? Now, there are professionals who are illegal, you know, doctors, teachers, nurses, even students who are illegal presently. Now, they come in legal, and then over the time, at the expiration of their status or their visa, they become illegal migrants, you know, and then they start hiding from the law. Now, there are also some artisans who come in legal, and then they remain legal throughout. You know, it depends on the program that brings them into the foreign country where they find themselves in, you know. So, and then there is also the claim that illegal, you know, all illegal migrants go through the sea. You know, so many of them pass through the airports, you know, the normal airports process. They pass through that and then arrive at their destination. This is my number one observation. Then number two, there is a place where you talked about the intervention that was given to the 36 states, amounting to about $300 million. And you say this intervention targeted 250,000 youths to give them skills, to equip them with entrepreneurial capabilities. Now, my problem is that you said that this intervention, the youth were expected to apply to receive loans as much as $50,000. When I divided this 300,000 by 250,000 youths that are its target, each youth will only get 1,200 loan, $200. So if each youth can get $1,200, and then the loan is $300 million loan targeting 250,000 loans, where would the other $48,800 come from? So the point is, you didn't interrogate this data. You just read it off like that, and then I think there is a gap. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Mazu, for that contribution. Now, can we hear from Professor Aneto?
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah,
we can.
Okay. Good afternoon, Director. Good afternoon, Professor Yushola. Thank you for your very broad and deep presentation. I'm not going into the semantics of structure and what have you. I will want to, I've known you for years, and I know that you are very deep into the environment and sustainability, implication for the population, and the global community. But the aspects I will want to pick on are: one, the issue you raised about nationalism and internationalism. And a lot of people have stressed this. I've been in a number of fora where people get very concerned about the shift of some of the Western powers from internationalism to nationalism. Well, that is fair enough as far as I'm concerned. And I think it's a challenge for us to take up our own responsibility. You know, for too long, we have been depending on the international community to help us to develop and all that. So when they are now beginning to look inward, I think it's a challenge to any serious government or society to look inward and take up its own responsibility and develop its own people. I argued this in a number of fora, particularly during the heat of the COVID, when people were saying that the Western world bought all the available vaccines and all that and all that. Well, fine. There may be some degree of injustice here, but that should challenge us. To challenge us to look inward and begin to build systems that will sustain us rather than looking always to the international community. That's one. Then the second one is, yes, the last speaker, Professor Abdallah, referred to that you outlined measures that have been taken to address some of the problems. Well, good. I see them more like rhetoric. Implementation is a problem. You know, yes, they are listed. How well are these implemented? And how well have they addressed the situation? And what effects have they had? These are some of the issues we need to look at. I think that there is really the need to create jobs. I have interacted with a number of youth who have to go outside, and many of them, in all sincerity, do not really wish to go out. But the situation or the circumstances at home are what have pushed them to go out. And many of them have lost their lives in the process. So these are issues that government need to look into very seriously and patriotically. Then you mentioned the issue of training. I don't think that is the problem. That is partly related to my last comment. I think people are reasonably trained. There may be need for updating or upgrading. The problem is that the jobs are not there or are insufficient. The opportunities, and of course, this has been worsened by the lingering insecurity in the country. You know, even those who have things they can hold on to and just manage, because of the serious problem of insecurity, many people want to leave the country. So, one, there has to be drastically and realistically addressing, and then secondly, it's not just the youth, it's the entire population. There is the issue of terrible insecurity in the country. So these are things we really need to address. If we have to tie stem the problem of migration and retaining our youth. There will be a problem later, because we need these youth to develop our country in all spheres of development. And if we fail to retain them, creating an enabling environment, ensuring that there is security for them and all of us, I think Nigeria is in for a very difficult time. So thank you once again, the presenter.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
for
you very
listening
much.
to me.
Thank you very much, Professor Neto. Now, I can see Professor Emeritus Sogolo with his hand up. Sir, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much. I want to congratulate Reverend Father Oyeshola for this very clear presentation. It is clear, and almost every argument, every statement that he has made is, comes true. But what first of all, I can observe that there are three themes in the presentation. There is the issue of environment, the issues of challenges of facing Nigeria since independence, and of course also the issue of migration of Nigerian youths. What I'm not too sure about is what ties all these together. And I'm sure the presenter tried to tie them together by linking them to the problems of poverty, insecurity, and so forth. Otherwise, I didn't see a direct link between what he said at the beginning about migration, about the environment and the issues of migration, or even the problems facing our Nigeria. By the way, when I left Ibadan some many years ago, the Dominican was a mission. I don't know how it looks like now, now that it is a university. It was very close to the University of Ibadan, where I spent over 30 years. So I'm sure the place must look different. Now, back to the paper, I'm not too sure if the capitalist system in which the environment is able to allow the issues of environment to really be resolved. You talk about Environmental Impact Assessment Act, you talk about the principle of international collaboration. Yes, these are obligations, we know that, but there's a capitalist system of values which hardly takes care of some of these environmental issues, and it is something that we ought to have, that the lecturer ought to have. Take the cleanup, that was a decision was taken about the cleanup many years ago. That project seems to have been abandoned, and nobody's talking anything. The oil companies are going ahead with their normal business. So the problem I face with the paper is that if the paper was strictly on environmental issues, then we would be able to go into some of this. But in a way, he has, signposted, touching each of these problems, which makes the paper interesting anyway. And I want to say congratulations, Reverend Father. You are, rather than restrict yourself to saving spirits, saving souls and so forth, you are now how to save human beings from the environment, which is another mission for you, I think. Congratulations.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Professor Emeritus Sogolo. I know maybe before he's over with those ones, then more questions or comments will come up. Over to you, Prof.
So I thank all the people who have made comments, recommendations, observations, and I want to quickly react to some of them. Maybe I begin with Professor Sogolo. Yes, I've known you for quite some time in the University of Ibadan here. We are neighbors. So thank you for your compliment. Yeah, I'm interested not only on the spiritual, but also on the physical. Man must also eat. Thank you. So let me quickly respond to some of your comments. The first one has to do with what is the linkage or what is tying the issue of the environment, the migration and development together in the paper. If the young ones are running away, they are disappearing to other parts of the world after we have trained many of them, we are losing in that process. And in relation to that, we are becoming people who seem to be irresponsible for creating the situation that will allow the young ones to disappear. If they continue to disappear, who's going to build the country for us? And so the question of migration, as well as the question of development and the responsibility of the government or the people in charge are interwoven. So the government cannot simply fold its own hands. Neither are we going to allow the government to do or not to do anything without others, all the stakeholders, not making comments and do something and challenging the government to do the needful. So this is where I try to say the connection, that environment, very, very important to us. The question of migration of our youngsters should be also a concern. And the question of development must also be part and parcel of the issues we should also address. In relation to the capitalist value, here again, we are not doing enough thinking, particularly the intellectual community in this area. As I've said in the course of the presentation, the issue of we want to develop, we must develop like the Oyinbo, like the industrial countries. We have not really interrogated that aspect. And if you are going to interrogate that aspect, the question of capitalist value must also be there. The communitarian dimension of our life must also be pronounced and all that. So I would still say, yes, enough is not yet being done in this area. If we begin to do this, we must also be prepared to face the consequence. That's why I say the challenge of, what's it called? That if you don't do my bidding, you are going to be punished in whatever form may be there. But that notwithstanding, we still have to interrogate all the serious issues that will allow our own development to be what we want to be, and not to also wait until things are more or less thrown down on us, forced down on us, that this is how you should be. We should be the people who should be dictating the type of way of life we want to live. So let me quickly also move to Professor Aneto. The issue of nationalism and internationalism. Yes, national interests, ideology is all over the place now. And so every nation state is preoccupied with its own citizens. You can't blame anybody for that because the resources are not infinite. And so whatever is required to take care of their own citizens, they have to work out ways and means by which they will be able to collect all these resources and take care of their own. And it is only when we have extra that visitors, quote unquote, can then be taken into account. It will seem as if that attitude is still going to continue, everyone unto himself. And I quite agree with what you said, Prof, in terms of saying this reality now is something that we just have to face squarely. That is a challenge unto us. Let us not be looking unto Europe to look for solution to our problems. We must confront the situation, any problem, any challenge we have. Let us try our own and do whatever is required, what is necessary. It is only when we do this that things will eventually change. If you continue to rely and depend on charity coming from abroad, a solution to our problems may not be there. Again, in the area of the implementation of interventions, yes, in many instances, government may make money available, but when it comes to the question of implementation of what needs to be implemented, we are all familiar with the story in the country, the question of corruption and all that. So until we also do something concrete along this direction, the implementation strategy to bring development onto us will still be very elusive. Again, more importantly, the issue of insecurity now makes things even more and more complicated. And this is my own personal opinion. We are not tackling the insecurity squarely and seriously. We are not doing it sincerely. If we do something about that, if security issue is challenged seriously, things will be much, much different. It will not affect considerably the issue of migration of so many individuals. And the poverty level of citizens definitely will be reduced considerably. So the implementation of whatever type of intervention that is being given, that is available, is very, very important. But at the moment, we are not yet strong enough, so to say, to implement those interventions in a very robust and reasonable way. Training is not a problem, that is definite. But again, the type of training we are also giving must also be looked into. This is also one of the reasons when NUC is trying to visit the curricula of many institutions to make sure that we are not only too concerned of emphasizing the theoretical dimension of so many things, education, but acquiring necessary skill to allow students to become self-employed, to be able to fend for themselves. This dimension is also very, very important. And gradually, we are seeing a bit of effort that is being carried out in many institutions where they are now training their students not to depend on when they come out and looking for collar jobs, but rather to be able to take care of themselves, feed themselves, take care of their family as well. So the type of training that we need to also do must also take that type of situation into account. And again, I agree with you when you talk about the question of security. It's a serious problem. And I do not know when solution will come, but let us hope. We should not give up hope. We should not simply say things cannot become better. With hope and understanding, we can continue to challenge, even though we will not see the solution immediately. But as long as we are doing what is necessary, eventually the question of security may be addressed and solution to many of our problems may be overcome. I think, yeah, there was an observation from the third speaker. Sorry, I can't remember the name again now. In terms of the classification of migrants, that I put them too sharply in terms of illegal and non-legal and all that. Yes, in this type of setting, to go into every detail can be a bit too long a process. That's why I just simply put them into those that are professional and those who are not professional. Some are legal, some are not legal. Some, when they go abroad, for example, some students, during the first few years, they'll be doing their work. But as soon as they're having some problems or difficulties, they may begin to hide it. And then the simple problem becomes compound problem and complex problems. And so they won't be able to find solution to their problems, and they become sort of refugees. So the people who were originally legal are now becoming illegal, and some will not even like to come back to the country. So I take your observation very well. Thanks very much about that. The intervention for youth, in terms of the other reference mentioned that you do the mathematical calculation, many people are left yet to be taken care of through that intervention. Okay, I also take that observation very seriously. Thank you very much. I think the second speaker, linkage between young people with migration and development, then the question of globalization, that has been there all along. Yes, that is true. And the media has now made it more exposed. There is no secret under the sun anymore because of the instrumentality of the media. So globalization is all along is there. And then when the head of state, the former head of state, Gowon, was saying we have plenty of money, but how we are going to use it is a problem. It's a common general statement all over the place that by that time, because of the resources at our disposal, yes, a lot of money was there, but in terms of sitting down, planning where, utilizing all the resources adequately, we didn't foresee that we can even be in our present situation, the present predicament now. If, I may be wrong, if Israel were to be Nigeria, with all the resources we have gone through, Nigeria should have become paradise on earth for all the blacks in the world. Nobody would like to go somewhere else because of the way they will plan and make sure that things are working for them. But unfortunately, in our own context, this is not always the case. So I take your observation also very seriously. I think, and then Professor Gloria, the dimension, paradigm shift and all that, I will also take that one into account. It's also very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, presenter. I'm sure we have all learned one or two things. I don't know if there's any last minute comment from the audience. Any last minute comment? Are we okay? Is there anybody who wants to say something? Okay. If there is no more comment or contribution, we will allow our presenter to say a final word, rounding it all up. And I think we have done justice to this topic, and we may want to now close the presentation for the day. But before then, last comment from him. I don't know, any comments? Okay, so our presenter will round up telling us the last word on this presentation. And I want to also quickly advise that our routine here is to make our presenters write up their papers for peer review to be presented in our journal. We have a journal, an international journal for migration and global studies, which is also hosted in NOW, and this center produces that journal. So we take our papers for peer review and present it free of charge. So that is one of the fringe benefits we give to our presenters. We present free of charge.
What about those who do not need that?
No, but
I'm only joking. No, don't worry.
As much as possible, we make our presenters publish in that journal and make it free. So for you to publish in that journal, we want you to present on our platform, share knowledge, let people critique it the way we have done here, everybody contributing to it and making the paper more standard. So we want it to be more academic, and that is it. Just to say, if I start disturbing you, say, please, we want your paper to be written up so that we can send for peer review. You understand where I'm coming from. And to also tell this audience that every fortnight, every Wednesday, 2 weeks time, we shall be having another presentation. And that time is going to be a symposium that will be so fantastic. We have 3 gurus in the area of migration who will speak to us about migration policy. I'm just preempting it. Migration policy, different aspects of it. And it's going to be a wonderful symposium from somebody's coming from the US, from Sweden, from Nigeria, and it will be really wonderful. So I want you to keep a date with us on the 13th of April, when we shall be having that symposium. I can say the DVC. I called her. I think her internet was performing. So maybe she has a quick word for us before our presenter round up for the day. Any quick word from you by DVC, CIR? Oh, I can't hear. Can anybody hear her? I think there's a problem somewhere. Is it my, please, can you hear me? Okay, she's talking, but I can't hear her, so it means it's her internet. So meanwhile, maybe our presenter should just round up. If our internet is better before we finally close, she will say something. So presenter, just to round up for the day.
Okay. Yeah, once again, I'm expressing my gratitude for the opportunity to make the presentation and for you inviting me to this audience. And for all those who have participated, I say thank you very much. One thing I want to emphasize is that no matter what happens, just as my old teacher used to tell me, that no matter what happens, if one's mother is a prostitute, there's nothing one can do about it. One will hope to pray and work very hard to make that prostitute mother to change her way of life and become a decent mother. Nigeria is very, very tough and difficult. Some will not even like to associate in any way with Nigeria because of what is going on. Insecurity and all that and all that and all that. But I want to emphasize that, yes, it is our country. No angel will come from abroad to come and do it for us. It is our responsibility. It is our challenge. Let us, no matter what happens, not lose hope. Let us, in our own different ways, in whatever opportunity we have, let us make our contribution to make Nigeria a viable environment, a place where all of us will be proud of. If we do not enjoy the benefit of hard work now, let the future generation be proud of what legacy we are leaving behind. So this is more or less what I more or less thinking that all of us should take home. The question of the problem of migration, development, environment, they are all interconnected. It is fundamentally for our well-being. So if we do our own part, ultimately, what we want will be realized, even in our own time. So once again, I say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much, Reverend Father, for words of wisdom from you, the elders. We appreciate you. We really appreciate all we have learned from you today. Thank you so much. And we believe that when next we call on you, you will answer us. Thank you. We appreciate you. On behalf of my Vice Chancellor, Professor Olufemi Peters, and all the entire staff, say a big thank you to you for being our guest in this session. I don't know, the deputy, okay now, can she talk for us now one more time before we say bye? Because we heard that, we saw her talking, but we were not hearing her. Okay, we want to assume that our network is nothing. Okay, so, well, I haven't said that. Thank you all. Thank you, Professor Uba Adamu. I'm ever proud to see you. Then once I see you on the platform, I'm always very excited. Professor Emeritus Sogolo, I've been missing you, and today I'm happy you made it. And Dr. Eric, Dr. Oli, Abisoye, these are people who are always constantly here on this platform. I really appreciate your presence. And everybody that is on the platform, you are very much appreciated. Thank you and bye-bye.